Here we are looking up the west front of Salisbury. This cathedral might not seem as impressive at first glance, but it's certainly one of my favorites. It is very old, built in the 1200s, and in fact, when the town, which is used to be located in what is now the historical site of Old Sarum, when they decided to move Salisbury a couple of miles down the road, they also had to rebuild Salisbury Cathedral. And, you know, as opposed to so many other cathedrals that we've come across that have taken anywhere from between 50 to 150 years, and you can actually see the different layers of history and bishops' tastes over the course of that time. This was all built at once, and it only took 38 years after they moved it. Here is the font, the major font of the church. If you just look carefully, the water is so still and perfect. Notice how it picks up the reflections, even of the beautiful stained glass windows in the opposite walls. So directly above me here is actually the spire crossing, with the spire on this church being 404 feet, and it is the longest in England. What happened was the weight, which is about 6,500 tons of the spire and the tower, ended up bending the supporting columns, and so the spire outside is slightly bent if you look very closely. Okay, and we're just entering the choir now. There was 106 original stalls, one for each canon and vicar, and these are all intricately carved, and they were begun being carved around 1236. And this is the earliest complete set of them in England. Okay, up here, the pipes. That's the pipes of the Willis organ from about 1876. Okay, and these paintings above us are actually dated from the 19th century, but they were essentially the recreations of the medieval ones that had by that point faded. A quick view of the south transept here, and as you can see, some very faded medieval paintings versus the, take you back over here, the redone ones from the 19th century. Okay. There's some slightly more sepia-toned glass that we saw back at Magdalen College in Oxford. So it's a bit difficult to see, really, but what we have here is the Prisoners of Conscience window, designed in 1980, dedicated to, obviously, the prisoners of conscience throughout the world. And there's a candle over in the corner there that you can see burning, and that burns all the time. It's an Amnesty International candle. Here we have the Hartford Monument. Okay. It's the tomb of Edward Seymour and Lady Catherine Grey, who was actually sister to Lady Jane Grey, who is probably a little more widely known. She was the Queen of England for only 9 days, executed at the age of 17. Essentially, they did not want the Catholic Mary to come to the throne after their brother Edward died, and so they tried to get Lady Jane Grey, or the King, or Edward at the time, really, to sign over everything to Lady Jane Grey to keep a Protestant on the throne. It did not work. Mary came back, very promptly laid her claim, and while she suffered at the thought of actually having her cousin killed, in the end, that was what she felt she had to do. Here we are finishing up in the south transept, just before we head into the chapter house, where we will see a second copy. We've already seen one this trip, of the Magna Carta. So we will have seen 2 of the 4 surviving copies, at least as far as we know, of this very important and historical document. Actually, on our way to the chapter house, here we are, just outside the cloisters. What's interesting is that these cloisters are pretty large, and unlike a lot of the other cloisters that we've seen that are parts of the cathedral, they were really a place more of relaxation for people to come and process through, as opposed to having a monastic order set up here, in other words. Okay, we just went through the chapter house, where we are not allowed, as in most chapter houses, to actually take video or photography, but we did see probably the most legible copy of the Magna Carta. So here we are back outside on the west side, well, southwest side. You can see this beautiful 404-foot spire tower, 1,600 tons.